quick break. I just want to say thank you for all the people around the world, Jamaica, Germany, Asia, Europe, South America. Thank you for listening to Leap of Health. Thank you for the support. And remember, my book is out. You can find it on Barnes & Nobles and Amazon. It's called Parents Are Greatest Teachers. Thank you again for all the support. And now, back to our episode. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Alex Valgood, and this is Leap of Health. And today, I am super excited. We're going to be talking to Kay'aleya Hunnybee. How amazing is that name? Just with that. We're going to be talking with her. She's an herbalist, an integrative health educator, specializing in menstrual, hormonal, sexual, and reproductive health. She holds a Master of Science degree in Therapeutic Herbalism from Maryland University of Integrative Health and a certification as a woman herbal educator with Abiba Brum, MD. And I just love everything that you're doing. You're also a yoga instructor. You pretty much do it all. And we're going to be talking about herbal womb wisdom. Before that, tell us a little bit about your story and how you became to be all this.
It's been a long journey, honestly, to get here. It's hard to find a streamlined answer to that, to be fully honest. I think it's been a journey that started, I think, when I was in college. So I'm 41, so this is like 20 years ago that I just started exploring different ways of living in the world, honestly. I started to see, because I was an anthropology major, so I was studying different cultures, and I started to see how different cultures actually perceived the world differently. And actually, I really got interested in medical anthropology, so learning about just different medical systems around the world and how different they were. From indigenous medical systems that were completely different and had such a relationship to spiritual health, and also and really combining that with physical health, and the overlapping of that was fascinating to me. And then I ended up I feel like it was a real honor and privilege to go to India for my study abroad program when I was in college. And I really got to see people living an entirely different reality, and also got to see a real blend, because Ayurveda, which is the ancestral Indian medical system, is so it's prevalent in certain areas of India, and I was in southern India where it's still practiced a lot. And so I saw, and it was similarly to some of those indigenous traditions I had been learning about in school. There's a lot of that spiritual layer that's mixed in with the physical layer, that's mixed in with the emotional and the mental layers. There's so much that's happening. So for me, it was just kind of that piqued my interest, but I didn't realize there was some way in the Western world to get involved in this. I didn't even realize there was a lineage at the time of herbal medicine that I could connect to in the United States. I didn't know that existed. I just was learning about this stuff in school, and I was kind of that's neat. There's different ways of seeing the world. And so after college, I left, and I was just what the heck am I doing? I just, I think a lot of people just now what am I doing with my life? And I didn't have money like a lot of people don't when they leave school. And I was just I have no practical skills. So I started working on farms, and I started learning how to grow my own food. I was that's a good start. I should learn about growing food. And so I got interested in just more of an earth-based lifestyle, and started seeing in the United States, people who were living more seasonally and were more in relationship with the plants. And then I worked on a farm where there was a person who was an herbalist there, but she was more like a folk herbalist, but she grew plants, she made medicines, she made salves and tinctures, and she used teas. And it was the first time that I had seen somebody ever utilize, even with the idea that we didn't have to just go to a pharmacy to get our medicines in the United States, there were other ways of working with plants. And then, over time I've learned, oh yeah, well, we have some traditions we still use. Some people will use more ginger or garlic or these things sometimes that's just a part of our life, or certain culinary spaces. But at that time, it didn't compute for me. So this was the first time I was like, oh, there's somebody who's doing this. That's like a thing. But it was very much just kind of that folk, like, oh, first aid stuff. And I found it interesting. So from there, I actually ended up at a retreat center in Oregon. I was really a nomad at the time. Like I said, I was just not sure what I was doing. It was a couple years of my life that I was kind of just going around and checking different things out and work trading and, just volunteering, honestly, in different places where I was also fed and housed. And so I was at this retreat center in Oregon and doing a whole lot of different stuff. But one of the things that happened is one of the people there led a plant walk through the forest. And we went on this plant walk, and I had been there for months already. I had already been walking through this forest for months, but we're on this plant walk and I'm walking, and she's showing us these plants and she's talking about all their medicinal properties. And this wasn't just like first aid stuff. This was like, she's talking about how this can help with menstrual cramps, or this can help with, digestive issues, or this can help like with stuff that was much beyond what I had already seen, And so I was just like, what? Like, these medicines are here? Like, it truly blew my mind. It blew my mind. And so from there, I was just like, wow, I need to learn more about, like, it really got me interested. And I was like, I really need to learn more about this. So I went back and we had a library there, and I started kind of like reading through some books. And I was a tobacco smoker at the time. And which was actually, now I think about that, I'm like, that was my first plant that I was like really connected to. And actually, a lot of people don't think that they have any relationship to herbs. And then they're like, oh, I actually like smoke tobacco, like, or cannabis or something like that. Like there's ways that people have a relationship to plants they don't realize they do early on.
Mhm.
But then I was a smoker, and I was at a point where I was ready to stop smoking. So I was kind of like looking, that was like, wonder if herbs can help with that. So I like looked through some of these books, and I found a book on herbal smoking mixtures, and I just read it and I literally believed everything I read. It's like now I have more of a you know, it's 20 years or like 17 years later, it's like I have more of a mind where I can be critical. But at that time, I was just blown open. So I was like, I'm believing everything that I'm reading. And I think, quite honestly, because of that, the herbs really helped me. They really helped me because I completely believed everything I was reading. So I was like, oh, okay, I could just use this herb and this herb and this herb, and I can smoke these, and I can add them to my tobacco, and then I can like slowly, decrease my tobacco. And it worked. And it totally worked in this way where then I also learned about these plants that I was smoking, and I got to know them. So because I don't actually recommend, typically smoking herbs is not a way that I recommend working with them at this point in my life, unless somebody's already a smoker. But it's like, actually for me, that was a perfect segue because I was already smoking. And so to take the herbs in and to feel them and to feel the difference that they had from tobacco was like, whoa, this is so different. So I smoked, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with herbs or not, or anybody listening is, but I was smoking Damiana, which is it's actually like, a lot of people know that plant as an aphrodisiac, but it's also a circulatory stimulant. It can help with menstrual circulation. It can help with circulation to the pelvis. Sometimes it can decrease menstrual. It can uplift your mood. Like there's different effects that it has. And I started noticing those effects in me, and I just felt good. So I was like, whoa, this is something that helps me feel good. I really felt it in my body. I'm the kind of person who like, yes, I believed everything I was reading, but I also have to feel something in order to like really embody and believe it. I can't just go out and be like, oh, I'm going to teach this now because I read it. No, it's like I have to feel it to believe it. So I felt that. And I was also smoking mugwort, and mugwort is actually like a also really beautiful, amazing plant that has a lot of properties. We can talk about it at a different time. But I started experiencing, it was really interesting because during that time I also experienced less menstrual cramps than I had been having, like less intense menstrual cramps. And I experienced an uplifted mood, and I was just like feeling good. And there's a lot more I can share about that, but it was like this sense of, oh, these work.
Mhm.
Not only am I no longer smoking tobacco, but I'm also feeling really good in my body. So I that was really kind of like my introduction. I was like a few months of my life, and there's so much more about that time. Of course, if we're telling our life story, there's a lot to share. I'm gonna let that go there. But beyond that, I was like, I want to learn more about this. I want to dive deeper into it. So at that time we didn't have, I don't know if you remember back, I actually don't know how old you are, but like back 17 years ago, we didn't have like super easy access to online searching and stuff. Like
Right.
there was like Yahoo, or
Yes.
like, I mean, there were a few things, but people's websites were pretty like old school, really just like written, and maybe there's a few pictures and janky
Yep.
type thing. So I was, but I didn't know where else to look, to learn. So I just like searched, and I found one dude who was offering an apprenticeship that was a live-in apprenticeship. And like I said, I didn't have like other things I was doing in my life. So he was offering a live-in apprenticeship in North Carolina. You know, room and board was offered, and I could learn herbalism with him. So I was like, okay. And of course, it's just now I'm like, wow, I wouldn't go to some random dude's farm like at the end. I didn't even have a car at the time, like at the
Yeah.
end of a dirt road, like with no reviews of that place. Like I would never do that now. But
Yeah.
23-year-old me was like, that's where I'm going. So I did. So I did. And it was a pivotal experience for me. So it ended up being like I was supposed to be there for 7 months. I was only there for 2 months, but at that time in my life, that was really formative. I realized I didn't actually. I needed at that time in my life. I needed a more expansive experience. I was, living with basically a hermit herbalist at the end of an elder hermit herbalist at the end of a dirt road with no car, and that was hard for me. However, what I did get was a complete immersion into what it could look like to
Mm,
be an
an
herbalist.
herbalist.
Yes. And he had 3 acres of land that he had cultivated, and he had the biggest at that time, I'm not sure if it's true, but it was the largest Chinese medicinal herb garden east of the Mississippi at that time. So it was very diverse. There was a lot of different plants there. I didn't know any of the plants. Like I was just meeting all these different plants. He had greenhouses, he was overwintering things, he was having me strain tinctures. Uh, we were filling prescriptions for the local acupuncturist with our apothecary. There were tons of books there. We were, making salves, and it was just I was potting up plants and, dividing them, and I was just learning everything with my hands and really getting a sense and tasting things. And he was really encouraging me to taste the different herbs and just have different experiences. And when I learned about something, I could try to eat certain things, but then when I learned about something, I could look them up in books. And it was very quiet, honestly. Like he was more of an introverted type of person, but he was an encyclopedia as well. Like his knowledge, he had been studying herbs for probably at least 30 years at that time. He'd been living on that land for that long. And he was just a plant whisperer in a lot of ways, and also really devoted to like therapeutic herbalism and also growing the herbs. So that was just, I can't even, there's like very few people who actually get the opportunity to have that kind of experience. And I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know I was like lucky. I was just like, I need to learn more, and I know nothing else about how to figure this out. And so um that was my beginnings. And from there I was kind of like, I just knew plants were going to be in my life. And it's been honestly a very meandering journey. From there I realized that I wanted to work with not just, I mean, it took me a little bit of time. Like you said, I'm a yoga teacher. I studied yoga. I studied massage therapy and body work. That was kind of where I went from there, because I was like, I want to learn other ways of healing too, like hand based touch. And I was
Mhm.
just really drawn to that. So that's my foundations. I kind of started there. And then I ended up being interested in working with pregnant people, like pregnant women and pregnant people. And so because of my massage, I had like worked on some folks who were
Mhm.
pregnant, and it just really drew me in that direction. And so I became a doula, and I was a student midwife for years. I thought that was a direction that I was going to go in, and I really got involved with and really started to feel the power of our womb space and the power of our wombs in general, and just our hormonal health and our menstrual health, and like how that is such a central and core part to us who are women or people with wombs. Like that
Mhm.
is, I mean, truly a power center for us. And so I kind of got into bridging those two worlds together. Over time, it's taken a long time to get to where I am now, but really got interested in like how can I bring the knowledge that I have and the experience that I have with menstrual, reproductive, hormonal health together with the herbalism and bringing the earth into it. And so, yeah, over time, I've just, because I've studied with so many teachers. Herbalism in the United States, I don't know if you're familiar, but herbal in the United States, there's no regulation for herbalists. There's no licensure, there's no regulation. And so because of that, there's about as many different ways to practice herbalism as there are herbalists.
Mm. I mean, it's kind of hard. I mean, I love that you touch on the point where you tell us about how you realized there was like all these cultures doing their own medicine. And I think and the understanding that they had with like the healing part of like, we don't only just heal your physical body, we connect that with the spiritual body. And I think they were onto something, because most of the cultures, that's how they heal with herbs, plants, or anything natural like that. And they understood the illness in such a different way. And I don't want to say different way, it just makes me say like in a complete way, because we tend to separate. But something that I tell my listeners all the time is that we're a whole system.
Yeah.
And in that whole system, it's all the body. And now that we know all these other things, it's our spiritual body and our mental body, if you want, which we have 7 bodies, which I can never remember, but we have all these different bodies within us. Why to separate? And I love that you talk about on your early beginnings how you discover that. My a background and upbringings, I'm originally from Mexico, and growing up, we didn't have anything. I remember my great grandma and my grandma doing, if you get sick or if you fall or something like that, there's always something that they do for you. You really don't go to the doctor much, right? They end up giving you like a tea, or they give you like a funny thing, right? If we will fell and scrape our knees or our face or whatever it was, or you hit something and I have like this bump and it's red, I'm still to till these days, I'm like, why would I do that? They will get some chocolate, dark chocolate,
Hmm.
mix it up with a little water
Mhm.
and put some of that, whether it was your knee, if it was in your face or something, that was the worst, because you'll have to be walking around with this like chocolate patch on your face, and people are like,
Yes.
what is that? But anyways, it's just like all these things that they did, these herbs, these food, these teas, right? That's how they were raised, that their upbringings was like that too. They look around what they had and they were resourceful, and obviously they knew like which herb did what, and this is good for like muscle pain, this is good for like the tummy, or if you have a flu, take this. But that was so helpful, right? And I feel like we have lost that along the way, because we like a quick fix.
Mhm.
Just give me a pill, give me just one medicine and be over with. But I think connecting with those roots, it was so important, not only just for our body, but you actually went to a little process as you were healing, right? It was not just like give you a pill, it was that connection with either grandma, great grandma, your family that were like, here, take this. It was that love and connection, that they were not just healing your physical body or whatever it was. It was that connection and love and with your spiritual side. So just remind me of that. And I thought it was so great. And I hope and I feel like people are now a little bit curious about what other cultures do, what
Mhm.
they've done for years. I mean, I've talked to acupuncturist before, and it was like, she told me it was like about 4,000 years they've
Mhm.
been doing
Yeah.
Chinese medicine. And I was like, 4,000 years. Gosh, why, Western medicine, it's been around for what, 300 or something like
I
that.
mean, it depends on what you describe as Western medicine,
Hmm.
but the American Medical Association, which has like really proliferated and like basically took, I mean, there's so much more I could say on that, but basically they like took over. There were other therapeutic modalities in the United States and the westernized world, there people were doing homeopathy and naturopathy
Yes,
and various other things in the late 1800s and early 1900s. It's only for the last 100 years
that's
that
not
like
a long time. Yeah.
biomedicine as we know it has even been a thing. Like, yeah, there were some beginnings that were happening, but a lot of it really just started like last 100, 200 years, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And when this acupuncturist, I mean, her family was an acupuncturist, so she was doing acupuncture since she was like 40. She was taught by her parents. I mean, it was like, oh my God, that's the dream, like how blessed this person is. But that's a whole other thing. And when she told me, she's like, yeah, Chinese medicine's been around for like about 4,000 years. And I was like, holy crap, like they've been doing all these things for like thousands of years.
Mhm.
It actually works because now there's scientific proof of a lot of things that they do, and they have tested all these herbs and all these things, and it's really good. It really helps you with no side effects. Here we are, 100 years plus, if so, and we're believing in all these pills and all these things that give us side effects and that really don't help at all. And by all means, I've been working for medical doctors for my whole life, right? My mom, she's a retired nurse. I do believe that Western medicine has something, but mostly when it comes to like you broke an elbow, you broke an arm, spine surgery. Yes, definitely that's something that a nerve it's not gonna kind of like put in place, and let's just be clear on that. Western medicine in certain ways, especially, and I talk from personal experience. I mean, I've been working with orthopedic doctors my whole life, and that's something that you do need, that specialty. You do need those type of doctors to be like, okay, let me do this. Or also too, like obviously if you have something that you need some sort of like transplant and something like that, they are so helpful. They have the knowledge, they know how to fix this, that they know all these things. But if you see like the whole a spectrum of Western medicine, there's a lot of things that could be helped with in some other less harmful ways. And
Yes.
and I think just having that thought, I think is just great. And the same thing, you mentioned 100 years ago, there was a lot of homeopathy and medicine like that. I was talking to uh, a practitioner from New Zealand, and
Mhm.
she was telling me that pretty much all of her, and this was such a cool fact, right? She was talking about how here in the States, when the beginning of hospitals,
Mhm.
it was homeopathy,
Right.
and
Totally.
and the main scientist or doctor that started homeopathy, right? Um, they have an actual monument, and like all these medical schools are named after him and all these things, and I'm like, how does anyone doesn't know about homeopathy on itself?
Mhm.
Because it's something that also, you know it comes from all these natural things. They made this little medicine. That's kind of like how, like, the beginning of medicine. I was so blown away by all her insights, and I was like, what? We
Mhm.
had it right.
Yeah,
We started good.
it's really interesting to learn about the history, actually. I think if people are interested, it actually really is interesting to learn about it. There was a lot of propaganda, so a lot of like media and advertising that was being put out to basically make a lot of the practitioners who were already practicing, whether that was homeopaths, naturopaths. There was something called eclectic physicians. It was a whole medical system that was eclectic. There was another one that was called the physiomedicalists. Like there was like these different schools of medicine essentially that were all, I mean, they all could be called Western because they were in the Western world, but they're all different, right? And all of them really got like thrown under the bus. Like they were really like the propaganda came out and they were like, oh no, that's backwards. That's not useful for us anymore. Now we have to turn towards antibiotics and pharmaceuticals and like that realm of medicine, which now is prevalent around the world. Now, I'm not saying like you, I'm also not like anti-Western, anti like biomedicine. I think there's an incredible amount we can learn. And actually, I think some of the work that people do, even pharmaceutically, can really help us. Like, I think there's a beautiful possibility if we were to integrate the different
Yes.
forms of medicine. And that's really what I'm all about. That's why I call myself an integrative health educator too, because I didn't mention this in my story, but maybe like I guess I started in 2017. So does that 6 years ago? I actually went to grad school for herbal medicine, partly because I wanted to learn some of the like real science behind it and be able to speak more with more knowledge and more of that medical terminology, to be able to speak to doctors and nurses and nurse practitioners and people who are in the medical field as we know it now in a way where they could understand me, because I think before, me talking more from a grassroots place, it's harder to meet together in the center. But I feel like absolutely, and and I'm sure you see it too, but I see it like there's more and more medical practitioners who are wanting to walk in the direction of integrative health and who are thinking more beyond their training.
Yeah.
And it is, I truly feel like that's the future of medicine. I think the future of medicine is like exploring what is possible when we weave together the strengths of the different forms of medicine. Yeah.
Yeah. I
But
think so too.
also like when you were saying the history of hospitals, it's actually interesting because I was thinking, well, the history of Western medicine, like it did start. I mean, it's all from something, right? So like actually the roots and roots and roots, if you keep going back to the roots, I mean, certainly herbalism is part of that, but you end up getting to like Egyptian medicine and Middle Eastern medicine and Greek medicine. And those people, I don't know if they called themselves physicians, maybe they did, but they were forming the beginnings of what now maybe you could consider to be Western medicine, but we're so separated from the tenets of health that
Hmm.
were described back then. But I was thinking about the origin of hospitals, and back in Greece and in Turkey, actually, in Greece and Turkey, there are ruins of old healing centers and like Hippocratic, like the Hippocratic oath is the thing that
Right.
doctors
Right.
sign or whatever. But Hippocrates was all about rest and fresh air and fresh water and movement and just like having the art of convalescence in nature and relationship. I mean, that is, if when you really look back at it, like that is the roots
Hmm.
of
Yeah.
all of these medicines, all of these
Hmm.
forms. So yeah, and that was the original hospital, was like that sort of setting, like a retreat center basically, where you got to like rest and be in nature.
How amazing is that? And
I,
where did we lost
oh my God.
the wisdom, it's so crazy. I mean, I think I read somewhere that the word doctor means to heal someone.
Mm,
And it's like everybody that calls themselves medical doctors, yes, you are the new doctors, but definitely you came from a long lineage of healers that cure with things that they had around their nature and like all these other things. And those are teachings from hundreds of years ago. And I agree with you. I think like in my perfect world will be combining the modern medicine with what we have done for like thousands of years. I think that's literally the way. And I agree with you too. Like there's a lot of medical doctors now that they see. I just spoke to Anna Perham. I believe that's her name. She's a medical doctor. She's been a doctor for a long time, and now she talks about how she's like, there's ways I can't help my patients, so I have to look for other modalities, other things. And so she comes by medicine, modern medicine, will like energetically work.
that's awesome.
How beautiful is that?
Yeah, more and
That.
more. Like I have a friend who's a nurse practitioner, so she's very much in the medical field and has been working as a nurse practitioner for years as a primary care like practitioner for people. And she more recently has been getting into all like earth-based practices. Like she's thinking so much about it now in a way that she never did before. And she's like,
Mhm.
her patients, especially chronic
Yep.
conditions, especially
Hmm.
chronic conditions. She has a lot of patients with chronic cardiovascular disease or with diabetes or these kinds of things. And it's like, for her, those patients have not been all she's doing is masking symptoms, you know? So to really get to the deeper layers, she has to go up to other places. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, and yeah, I mean, totally agree. And I felt that I think that was the turning point for a lot of people that's in the medical field. How can I help my patients without giving them some other thing, some other like disbalance
Hmm.
or something, you know? Because I mean, modern medicine, they do want to help. They try to help. That's what they go through all these harsh school for years. They want to like help patients and try to make people better. But I think, you know, now they're seeing that, okay, I'm trying to help you with your hormonal imbalance and I'm giving you this other thing that's messing up this other part of you.
Yes,
And now
so then
you have
they end up having to
mental health
prescribe, yeah,
problems.
and they end up prescribing medications to deal with the side effects of a medication they're already giving you. And then people are on 7 medications, and it's like, which of these is even causing? I mean, are they even helping? Like, it's like, it's a challenge for sure. Yeah, one of the things you mentioned before was that concept, kind of in the same vein of like, to me, it's like risk versus benefit. I feel like it's always my question is always risk versus benefit. Like, what is the risk of certain medications? Like if somebody has a mental health challenge going on, like what's the like there's a huge spectrum of options here, right? Like yes, of course you can choose a pharmaceutical, and for some people that is like the right thing and it works really well and they don't even have side effects and that's just like great for them. But there's a whole lot of people who do end up with side effects from certain medications. And so like, oh, there's actually herbs like I mentioned before, damiana. Now I'm not going to say that is not like going to fix everyone with like depression or something like that. But there are ways that for certain people, you can actually work with combinations of herbs, you know, formulate herbs specific to that person that might be helpful. That might be all they need. And then there's a way lower risk than if you're like on some kind of, you know, antidepressant medication. So it's not like to me, it's not a this or that. It's not like we should do this or we should do that, but it's like, how do we really assess what the risks are and what the benefits are, and how can we like work with individual people to figure out what's right for them, you know?
Mhm.
That's really my perspective.
And on that point, pretty much for physicians, right? If they're the ones that need to be on that spot, and also see it as, you know, we go back to it as a whole system. Why is
Yes.
this patient having mental problems? Let's see,
Right.
let's see their diet. Oh,
Yes.
they're deficient on all this.
Yes.
All these vitamins, minerals, etc., are causing for this patient to have a breakdowns. Let's start with that. We're
Yes. The
not
total
ruling,
it
yeah,
very
we're
much.
not ruling out that you have some
Yeah.
sort of mental
Yes.
problem or whatever. Let's fix this. Now let's give them good whole foods, good this. Let's give them I don't know, supplements, whatever it is to
Yeah.
get that balance.
Or even like connection. I mean, it could be that they're lonely. Maybe they need more connection with people who like are loving of them. Like there's so many, or maybe they need to be moving more, or maybe they need to be have a little time in nature. Even if you don't live in a rural place, you can still go to a park. Like there
Yeah.
are opportunities to be, there's so many things, there's so many elements of
Yeah.
our dynamic health, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's true. I think before we even give you this pill, we
Yes.
should do like some sort of assessment of like, okay, same thing, right? Like as you're mentioning. And this is like back to our basics of life. Like
Yeah.
literally. Okay, before we put this patient on all this medicine because we cannot deal with her or him or whatever. All right, let's see the whole system. Is the patient eating, sleeping, eating well, drinking enough water, going out, socializing? Because those are some of the 5 factors for us to have some good mental health.
Totally. Hmm.
And I mean, it might be a little bit of more work, a little bit more of digging, but
Yeah.
it's like our health.
And it
It's
takes
like
longer. And I think a lot of doctors don't have the time, realistically, with like the way insurance is and the way their profit margins are and whatever, that whole thing that I don't understand because it's not me, but I know that that's a whole thing. And
yeah,
so, yeah, doctors don't necessarily have the time, but if there could be somebody you go to before a doctor that was like, okay, we're going to look at your whole life. And then, yeah, if we can't figure it out with that, then maybe you head to the doctor and they can help you, like with like,
it's something else.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah, I think yeah, I think integrate it's so interesting that our conversation is going this direction because it has nothing to do with womb wisdom, but it has everything to do with
To do
body
with,
wisdom. And it
yeah.
has everything to do with integrative health, and that is the way that I view and I view like what matters, like for us to be who we have the potential to be in our lives. We need to find like all these different elements of our lives, like we need to support them. And that's absolutely, if I'm working with somebody who is hormonally imbalanced, or if I'm talking about even if it's like endometriosis, like even if we're talking about something that's like a clinical condition like endometriosis, it's always going back to these baseline factors. It
Hmm.
always is, because it's often that some of these can actually reduce, it might not make something completely go away, but can reduce some of the symptoms and can increase a quality of life. And to me, it's all about optimizing health, right? So like optimizing health, integrative health, like looking at the different lifestyle and health factors. Nutrition is always involved in that. I mean, absolutely, because like you're saying, I think you're in the nutrition
Yeah,
field, and
yeah, yeah.
like nutrition is like it's true, food is medicine. And not only is food medicine, but we're like taking in food every single day, you
Yeah.
know, multiple times a day, large portions of food, because we have to eat food to
Eat.
survive as
Hmm.
humans.
Yeah.
And so it's like an essential component. And so when we're sitting there and we're eating Fritos, or we're eating like, or we're only eating, one particular food, even if you think you're eating healthy and you're only eating like one or two foods, or you're not eating enough food, or you're eating too much, there's so much to look into. So,
Yeah,
gosh,
yeah. No, it's true. I mean, it's one of those that I had this client that will only eat potatoes.
exactly. Yes.
Like it blew my mind away.
Yes.
I'm like, you only
I've
eat
seen that too.
potatoes. I think it was potatoes and rice or something like that. And I'm like, I mean, I love those. They're great. But we need a little bit more variety for your gut. And even though it's like a healthy stuff, you still need a lot of things. And as you mentioned, like we're eating all the time. And one of the things that I always remember with food, yes, food is medicine, but also food can be poison if you eat the wrong food. And we're talking about all fast food, McDonald's, fried stuff, all these processed food that you don't even know what it is anymore, right? We're talking about that food, because some people thinks that's food, unfortunately, and
I grew up eating
unfortunately
that
that is
food.
not.
I grew up eating that food.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, yeah, I just ate a bag of this, or I popped this in the microwave,
Or
and I'm
like
like,
I
what?
remember,
No.
yeah, like I would eat. I remember because I we didn't. Yeah, it was. I had no understanding of nutrition growing up, and I didn't eat whole foods at all. Like my family didn't do that, so it's like I'd have Pop Tarts for breakfast. I'd go to school, and sometimes I'd have chocolate chip cookies for lunch because I had $1, and I was like, oh, I'll just get the
This,
cookie
yeah,
instead of the sandwich because that sounds better, And then
right.
like for dinner, I'm like eating canned food that's like totally processed, or like some kind of frozen thing that's totally processed. It's like that was my reality. Plus, we went to fast food all the time. Like I like ate
Yeah,
donuts for breakfast, and like
yeah, yeah,
and I think that's the reality, is that so many people, it's just normalized. It's normalized that even if you think you're eating healthier food from those places,
hmm,
there's still a lot of additives that are going into them. So
yeah,
unfortunately,
yeah,
yeah.
for sure. And I agree with that. Like, a lot of people still goes about their life like that, having a little donut in the morning, coffee, like all these things are like so normal. Like this is what our society does, right? But when you know better, you do better.
Really.
So everybody that is listening, they're like, oh man, I can't have donuts for breakfast. Probably it's
Well,
not the best idea to have it every
yeah,
day.
and like, yeah, exactly. It's like one of those things you can treat yourself to occasionally. Like, I think it's important to have moderation, but it's like, to me, it's more like a 90%, 10%, or 95%, 5% rule. Like I'm kind of more than 95%, 5%, where it's like, okay, 95% of the time I'm going to be like eating, at my like more optimized healthy level of what I see as good. And then 5% of the time I do have little like treats. And I think that that's healthy and important for us,
Yeah, of course. And honestly, once you're eating like, for your body to be healthy, you rarely want things. And
Absolutely.
but yeah, I mean, having them here and there, I love pizza. I'm a big pizza lover. But then we go back to like, why don't you make it yourself?
Yes.
Make it like a little event at home or something, and do something yourself that's not gonna have preservatives and all these things. So thinking about just different ways of how always what's gonna be best for your body, and you're not gonna regret it later. You're gonna have a stomachache, or you're gonna have all these things, right? But yeah, I mean, just those are some really good points to just think about health in general. And when we get sick, let's go back to our basics, see how we can help ourselves with like nature and things that we have at our reach. You mentioned ginger, garlic, lemon water, oregano tea, like all these things
Culinary
that,
spices. Like, oh my gosh, how much just our spice cabinet can offer to us is pretty phenomenal. Like a lot of people don't realize nutmeg. Nutmeg is really supportive for calming the nervous system down. You might have some in your cabinet that you only use on holidays or something, but like that's something that you can actually work with medicinally. And absolutely, ginger is one of the best to me. Ginger is like one of my favorite medicinal plants, partly because it tastes good, so it's like enjoyable to put into food, but also ginger tea, ginger in your food. It's actually like it's circulatory stimulating. It's supportive if you have cold and flus, if you've got phlegm going on. It's like wonderful for that. It's helpful for your digestion, can calm the digestion down, is supportive for menstrual cramps, can calm menstrual cramps down. If you have colder cramps, it depends on the kind, but like for some people that can be helpful. You can even grate ginger and put it, like you were saying with the chocolate, the cacao or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
You can actually put ginger as a poultice, just grated ginger on top of your womb space if you've got menstrual cramps, if you've got more cold, damp menstrual cramps, which kind of feels boggy and it kind of feels like there's like your circulation isn't down there. Like it can be helpful to bring the circulation there, to literally put ginger on top. Or you can do that on your chest if you've got like cough stuff. There's just so many ways to use this one freaking plant that like is in
yeah,
almost every grocery store that
yeah.
everywhere. And that's like, I love that about herbs. I love that about food and the way that food and herbs can come together. Like
Hmm.
one of my favorite ways to work with herbs is to incorporate them into food in some way. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I love that. I mean, I think we have talked about the history of medicine and all its applications, and how in our dream world we would like all of them to be combined to for optimal health and for optimal help, pretty
yeah.
much. So I think that's really great job that you're doing out there. And I think the more we educate people and all these different methods, different modalities, like all these, we're all different, so we all need different things all the time. And I like that you mentioned that, which the risk on things that you're gonna take. If you're gonna have, you're gonna take medicine that's gonna give you all these side effects, or all these other things that are gonna damage your insides, might as well just take a look at other alternative things that will not give you anything. And if they don't help, then you could just go back to whatever it is that you're doing. And we're not saying stop taking your meds. Always consult your physician and go to a someone that knows about this, a professional. So this has been an amazing conversation. If anyone wants to get in touch with you or have any more questions about this, or they have also more questions about the womb healing and when it comes to herbalists, where can they find you?
Yeah, well, I would say number one, I have a podcast called Herbal Womb Wisdom. And so you can just
Yes.
look that up, and you can just scroll through. There's like over 50 episodes. So you can scroll through and see if there's any that you're specifically interested in and just check that out. And then on Instagram really is like one of the places that I am. So that's at Herbal Womb Wisdom, same name. And then if you want to check out my website, see things that I'm offering, herbalwomb.com. So those are the 3 places but I think my podcast is a good place to just start, see if there's anything you're interested in. You can get my vibe and get a sense of like the direction that I go in things. I have lots of amazing guests, and yeah.
That's amazing. Please do check that out. I will put all your links and information on the show notes for anyone out there that wants to still, or needs more information about my show. You can find me at alexvalgood.com. You can find me on social media everywhere. And remember, my book is out. You can find it on Barnes & Nobles and Amazon. It's called Parents Are Greatest Teachers. Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Hope you got some really good information from this, or, that now you're going to think twice about what you do when it comes to health, because you are your best investment. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for listening. And please, everyone, have a blessed day.